When it comes to CVs, this episode is by far one of our most requested. To learn just how to design your CV for the NGO sector, stay tuned for the entire episode. My name is Madhani. You can call me M.
And my name is Lily. You can call me L.
And together, we're M&L, aka Hanging with the Girls. Mshauri careers, hanging with M&L.
So before we even start to look at the CV, I just want to give a brief overview for those who might not be familiar with the NGO space, and for those who are already familiar with the NGO space and already know this information. So usually you have roles that are categorized in three areas. You have support roles, and Mudhoni, what I mean by support roles is like finance, HR,
right,
procurement. Then you have programmatic roles. So each NGO has specific specializations. So you could have healthcare, you could have water, sanitation and hygiene, you could have shelter. So you do have specific programming. And then the third one is overall management. So we're looking at a country director, a head of an area office, and
it's like a CEO type.
Exactly.
In the for-profit side, huh?
Exactly. So when you're writing your CV, a lot of people ask at the start, what should you put as the title? So obviously you put your name, and then I always say, international development professional, as we see here, and then put the specific specialization. So if you're like a wash specialist, water, sanitation and hygiene, put wash specialist. If you're a grants manager, put grants manager. Now, if you're in overall management, you can actually just leave it as international development professional and don't have to elaborate further than that.
Okay.
And then something that is also very key, especially given this time that we have with COVID, a lot of international development professionals work from home. They might, for example, be at Care South Sudan, but this person is working out of Nairobi and they travel back and forth. So it's good to put your current location. So as a recruiter, I know when to reach out to you for an interview and what time is appropriate to set these logistics. Obviously put a phone number that works, an alternative phone number, and your email address. So it's pretty similar to any other type of CV cover. I think this is sort of a generic. The only thing that might differ a bit is maybe the location aspect, where you have to stress whether your current location is what is actually stated within your organization.
Correct. All right, let's jump into where you now start talking about yourself, and that's your career objective or career summary section. We've said it in other episodes we've done on various CVs that the standard framework to use is a past, present and future structure. So here is where you talk about what you've been doing, and you use sentences like 10 years experience in international development across the African region. Then you work your way into what you're currently doing, and start sentences like currently supporting Plan International as the regional director for Eastern Central Africa. Then you talk about your future. Career objective long term is to transform the development field using automation, technology, what have you. So just put a futuristic plug into that sentence. So that should take no more than 4 sentences total, and it does a great thing into setting the tone for the recruiter to then read the rest of your CV. Next section is education and professional development, and this is typical of any other CV really. Put your MBA, as you can see there, with the start and end dates. Mention your bachelor's degree, any other diplomas you can have fall under here, and especially your courses, because the development space is very particular about continual learning, isn't it? So whatever certifications you've acquired over the years, there will be many. In the NGO space, you're trained a lot, right?
Yeah.
So pick top 5 that are from reputable certifying institutions. Like this individual here has chosen a Harvard sort of course on gender sensitization and maybe a data analytics one. All right.
So let's jump into the next section, which I think is very, very key. It's somewhat of a summary of your professional highlights, and how this sort of differs in the NGO spaces. You will find that donors are very specific, organizations are very specific. So what we like to see is you having previous experience in a certain area. So I would always highlight, what donors have you worked for? USAID, SIDA, ECHO, you name it, because they're reporting, the way they conduct their audits is very, very different from each other. So by putting in there, it actually puts you at an advantage. For example, if you're coming in to run a program that is funded by ECHO, and I see, okay, you've worked with ECHO before. So it's really good to put in that information there. For example, if you're working in maybe a conflict zone, and you're working in a country which has had a lot of instability, you might want to put some of these organizations, because working in danger, hard to reach area is a different context than working maybe in an urban setting.
Right.
And sometimes you actually do need people who've had experience working in some of these places, which is actually difficult, and it's difficult mentally as well. So it's good. So I always say pick 4 to 5 professional highlights and look at what is entailed in the job and customize it. So if it's a job that consists of leadership, put your management experience, put the number of people
and quantify it.
Yeah, exactly.
If we look here, this person can explain that they've had 10 years experience of managing, and currently they're managing 20 people in a certain program. That speaks very quickly to the recruiter, who on average, we've said this over and over again, has less than a minute to decide whether to shortlist you. And this is the section that ultimately will make L put you in a shortlist or not. This is immediately followed by the experience section. So far you've set the tone, and by now, if Lily is going to shortlist you, she probably already has, but she just wants to corroborate what you've put in your professional highlights with the actual experience you've had. Now, in this CV, we've picked one job to illustrate what you should write, but of course, it should be in chronological order. So put down the roles you've had and organize them as such. So here, as you can see, we have the project manager. Organization here could be plan, could be care, could be SIDA, and the location. And then talk about the major responsibilities you had. In the NGO space, this is very key. And you should elaborate the technical support you've provided, as John Doe has done here, the leadership responsibilities you've had, and more so the M&E side, emphasize that. Then boast about your achievements. Pick 2, 3, should we be like 3?
Yeah.
And use the STAR method to explain. We've illustrated something here. So through our programs, effectively reached 5,000 households. So you can see there, the eye will roam to the number. It's 5,000 out of 4,500. This is an achiever, and this then makes the recruiter that much more eager to make that decision.
Great. As Mudhoni has mentioned, that part is pretty generic with many other CVs. Put your title, put your organization, put your key responsibilities, put your achievements. Now, something that happens quite often in the NGO world is maybe you work in emergency response. And what does that mean for people who might not be familiar with this? Sometimes we have crises that arise. You might have like a flooding somewhere, and you have
acts of God, as they're called, unpredictable, huh?
Yeah, like maybe 100 people are displaced. So you brought in for just a 6-month period to stabilize the situation. So you will find people who work in emergency response tend to work anywhere from 2 months to 6 months. Very short-term contracts. Now, using the previous method, if you put all your short-term contracts, we will be looking at a 10-page
10
CV.
pages, and it happens.
Yeah, it happens. So what we do advise is, if you've had a lot of short-term contracts, is to use a table format, as you can see here. Put in the role, the organization, the duration, and then very likely the responsibilities and the key achievements, maybe like 2 to 3 key achievements. And this way, it helps you save on space, but it also makes your CV readable to the recruiter, because a recruiter can get fatigued if they are going through 10 pages. And similarly, on the same note, if you've had a lengthy work experience, for example, you've worked for 20 years, realistically, maybe the first 10 years of your career for this specific role, although it builds up, it's not necessarily relevant that you need to elaborate on key responsibilities, key achievements. So what I would say is, for those roles, maybe just put the title, put the organization, put the location, and then the duration. And what can happen is, in the interview, I can now probe. If I see something interesting, I can see, oh, I see, here back in 2004, you were a program manager. Walk me through a little bit of that.
All right. So the bulk of the CV at this point is done.
Yeah.
Now we talk about the peculiar things that will get you eliminated, especially if it's an organization that needs you to have proficiency in foreign languages. So this section is something that you must put. And tabulate it as we've shown you there. Language, and whether you can read, write, and speak it. Here, John Doe can speak both French and Spanish, but in various degrees. In French, they're fluent, Spanish, they're basic, and this gives the recruiter an easier time to know if you're a fit or not.
So let's talk about references for a moment here. I think it's always great to have at least a recent supervisor, as that speaks to your testament in doing your job and how you can be managed. And then if you can have 2 supervisors, the better. But I say at least have 1 recent supervisor as your referee. And then in the NGO world, it's, we deal with a lot of stakeholders. So there are a lot of consortia, there are a lot of cluster meetings. And if you're able to get a senior person in any of these sort of clusters to speak to you as a referee, that's also gold, because it shows your ability to work with different stakeholders, which is very key in the NGO space. And if not, then just get a peer. So I would say average at least 3 referees. If you can get 2 seniors and a peer, or 2 seniors and a senior individual in a different organization, whether it's a consortium or cluster, that's the way you should go. So yeah, thank you for indulging us today when it comes to NGO CVs, and we hope that this has been a fruitful session.
Yeah, and remember that we have a lot more in our playlist on the channel. If you are looking for a CV guide, if you have no work experience, or if you're in the for-profit sector, so check out our videos and you'll find resources there for you.